Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite YouTuber, live from LA. I got a special guest, you know what I'm saying? And yes, you guys see me suited up. It's a rare occasion, but I'm here with, sir, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Ike. Just call me Ike. Simple.
Okay. Now we got Ike in the building. Ike, can you tell the people what you do and who you are? Because they see you looking sharp and they're like, is he a mobster? What's going on?
Hey. Well, let me say this. I do have a couple of, and by way of introducing myself, talk about my YouTube channels. I have a YouTube channel called Prometheus Engineering. Solo's going to be kind to put the link on that. Prometheus Engineering is for engineering students or people who want to get into engineering concept, mechanical and structural engineering. And I also have a band called WeAreSolRising, right? WeAreSolRising. He's going to drop the link as well. And in my regular life, if you will, I'm an engineering consultant. I have a consulting company, and I'm also into sales of construction products, services, and software.
Now, one of the main things that has been going on in YouTube, as you're familiar with, has been the conversation of high-value men, right? And I gotta give shout out to Kevin Samuels. He has his own fantastic YouTube channel. Yo, Kevin, what's up? I know you watching. Also, he's part of a co-host of mine on the 7 podcast or show that we have on Donovan Sharp's channel, along with the other guys there. Here's the thing, before we even get into the schism of the high value man, because the controversy that has ensued because of Kevin really raising this talking point. I mean, it's not just on YouTube, but I've seen it also on Instagram and other social media because Kevin has gotten so big now, right? And I know this is subjective, but in your definition, well, number one, what is Kevin's definition of high value man? Do you know? Or?
Perhaps I'll be hard pressed to list out all the parameters, but I know that it's about money for a certain amount of time.
Right.
And then there is a network, and then there's utility as well.
What does utility mean?
Being useful. In other words, he says you cannot be a high value loner. You need to be useful to the group. You need to be open to being used. Therefore, you have a network of people whom you also use.
The women using it a lot. They know.
Exactly. You have a network of people that you use and a network of people that find you useful and that can use you. And if somebody comes to you and be like, hey, you know what, there's this, I need a high power lawyer for this particular thing in the construction industry, you're like, you know what, I got a guy, right? That's what the utility aspect of it has to do. So basically, I would say that the 3 ones that come to mind now is money, the network, and utility.
Okay. Now, I know that with the high value man, it's a subjective argument, right? Or definition wise anyway. But what's your definition of what a high value man is?
I would say that if we were just to continue from Kevin Samuels' enumeration of aspects, I tend to talk about what's implied in those aspects, right? So if those things are the icing on the cake, what is the cake there? So in order to make money for a certain amount of time, right, it involves certain virtues: consistency, hard work, having a plan, and executing for a certain amount of time. That's why he says for a certain amount of time, because maybe you just lucked out one year or something like that, right? But no, you have to have a plan, executed it, you had certain hard skills that you were developing, you have certain soft skills that you brought in, you built a network, you started a business, whatever it is, and then you make it year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. He says 5 years, right?
5 years,
so,
yeah, that's correct.
I'm talking about what's implied in making money for 5 years. There's a series of virtues, which I just enumerated some of them, right? And for me, really, it's about someone who's passionate about life, right? That's because the ultimate value is life. And then there's certain virtues you pursue in order to live a good life, in order to pursue certain interests and develop certain talents, if you will, right? And these things are not easy. So for me, that's what underlies all the stuff that he says, right? When you talk about the network and utility and so on and so forth, people want to talk about the character aspects. Well, how do you think you become useful by being someone of ridiculous character? No, you need to have certain virtues in place. And for me, I focus on those. And at the bottom of it is a zest for life, a passion for life. That is my view of life.
Okay. You know, and I can dig that, right? Because you basically just building upon the foundation of what Kevin has, right? And I'm not, by the way, let's make it clear, I'm not here to redefine Kevin's definition, right? I think that Kevin brought up a great conversation that instead of just talking about, big booty girls or, Cardi B getting divorced again for the second time in a row, now we have a conversation about elevation. Mm-hmm. Even though it seems that with the conversation, they're stuck on some basics, and we'll get more into that in a moment. But one of the things that I made a stream recently talking about what is a spiritual high value man. I think that a lot of people get caught up in the money aspects, and that's where a lot of the schism comes from, because a lot of people aren't making six figures, right? Especially when we start talking about black men, right? But to me, the spiritual aspect is very important, and the reason I bring that up, Ike, is that we don't have a lot of men, especially in the male spaces that I'm in regards to video content, that talk about spiritual things. They talk about, and I know some people might disagree with me. I believe in God, but what I'm saying is that a lot of people, they don't even talk about what they believe in. If they believe in life after death, if they believe in a higher consciousness, if they believe in the universe and being able to manifest things. So I guess when I watch your videos, there's kind of like a spiritual underlining or message, right? Or am I wrong?
You are not wrong for using that word and characterizing it that way. And even when you asked me what is my definition of high value man, which is like I'm not a dictionary, I'm not into defining words, but I tend to go from what's implied by the surface attributes, right? So, and I talked about virtues, and then I went down that the ultimate value from which these virtues spring is the zest for life, and so on and so forth. Therefore, and we started out actually with this mastery of subjective consciousness thing, right? So you already see that I'm definitely about that, because it has practical elements, but also because of that peace of mind and that oneness and wholeness that you're looking for. Okay, so there is a spiritual aspect to it, but the point is this, and this is why Kevin Samuel goes to the top. He goes to the icing on the cake,
right? Because
if you just talk about the spiritual stuff and so on and so forth, you cannot measure it. You can't measure it. Okay. Look, there are, if you talk about like no fap, for example, okay, you have days, okay, but you're gonna have certain aspects, days that you're counting. That's a measure.
Right.
You're gonna have certain aspects of your life, certain things that in your character, or certain things that you actually are doing. Maybe you're working out better.
Right.
Maybe you're having more success because you're focused more on your business.
Right.
Those things are gonna rise up to the top, and they're gonna be able to be measured. Right. So I think that spirituality and so on and so forth gives people an excuse a lot of times if you start from there.
Okay.
And also, there's this weird juxtaposition that people do, which is if you talk about anything material, which tends to be things that rise to the surface and then can be measured, right? They want to immediately attack you about, well, what about the spirituality? That's why I always say, look, you think you got those material measures by just whatever? Yeah, some people were the children of Bill Gates or whatever, and they just got all that stuff. But that's not what we're talking about. If you see a guy, okay, he's got a haircut business. He's been in the corner of 5th and Home Street, whatever, for the past 5 years. His business is doing great. Trust me, he's a man of character.
Right.
You don't need to be, and he says, no, you don't need to go like, well, what about his spiritualist and how does he handle that? He has to have the character, he has to have the virtues in order to portray this value which you see, right? So I push back on the juxtaposition between materialism and spirituality, because go ahead.
Oh, I don't mean to cut you. The only reason I bring up the spiritual side, Ike, is because it's not to oppose the financial aspect. I think that that's very important. That's key. But the reason I bring up the spiritual aspect is because when you're dealing with character, for example, with virtue, with integrity, with honesty, loyalty, these things that are being lost now because we're in a society that rewards effery, to censor myself.
And buffoonery.
Yeah, buffoonery. The only reason I bring that up is because you look at, and I'm not trying to deviate from the main topic, but when you look at certain people that have a lot of success, they may have the network, they may have the utility, the money. Celebrities, for example, some of them have all those things, but they're some of the most miserable people in the world.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, definitely don't be getting your cues from celebrity. If you want to, if the point you just brought, I have a couple of sentences to say or to speak on.
Go ahead.
The point of people whom you see having, in an external way, success, but they're not internally fulfilled. And I have a couple of things to say about that. One of them is that they may have 50 acres of land cultivated that everybody sees while everyone else has 0.5 and 1 and so on and so forth. But they probably know that they have actually 150 acres, they've only cultivated 50, and there's 100 acres that they do not have cultivated. In order to be successful, the flip side of talent is an obsession, it's a compulsion, it's almost a destructive personality trait. Okay, you see these things go hand in hand a lot, right? Highly successful people have an edge to them. Okay, and they're also compulsive, they're obsessive, they're obsessed.
Like Kanye West.
Yeah. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, the name goes down the line. These people are obsessed with stuff. You cannot succeed without being obsessed. Now, if you do not cultivate your talents and also develop your interest to the full capacity, this particular kind of obsessive behavior gets turned inwards and start to eat away at you. You start to develop bad habits, you develop alcoholism or gambling or women or whatever. You start to look for accolades from the external things and so on and so forth. So point is, when you see these people and they have some amount of success but they're not happy, there is a chance. There's a likelihood that the part of what you're seeing is that obsessive behavior, they're not actually cultivating it to the fullest. They've turned it to bad self-destructive habits that is destroying them. So definitely don't take your cues from celebrities, okay? Right. Because of the accolades that they get, there is a great temptation for them not to actually push themselves to cultivating the full 100 acres. So they cultivated 50 acres, but they have 100 acres left over, which is 100 acres worth of obsessive behavior, right? That they're not cultivating, and they're gonna flip that into bad behavior and self-destruction.
Okay, I get that. I can dig it. All right. So going back to the topic here, now that we've kind of defined what being high value is, let's get straight to the meat and potatoes. One thing, by the way, and going back to Kevin, and I'm not trying to use Kevin, but Kevin has brought up this.
Kevin's man.
He's brought up this topic, this argument. But when Kevin started to explode, and I noticed it, all of a sudden there's all this pushback. Oh, he wants black guys to wear suits, and he wants them to cut their dreads so they can get jobs, and all of this pushback. And when I look at Kevin, he's very refined. He's a gentleman, a man of taste. I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with wearing a suit? Why is it that when we look, and by the way, Ike is black for those who are not aware, no cap.
West African, straight up.
You know what I'm saying? But when you look at that, why is it looked down upon, number one? I mean, is it just in the community, or is it just a YouTube thing? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So let's do this then. There is the community, and then there's YouTube.
Yes.
Above all that is the general human psychology. And in the general human psychology aspect, I don't think you're surprised that anybody will push back on something like that, right?
Right.
This is typical human behavior, right? You're like, you're not satisfied with your particular position in the hierarchy. Right. And therefore you rail against the hierarchy, okay? This, in some instances, is even justified, right? Depending on the particular regime, the particular society, and so on and so forth, right? It's even justified to be like, F hierarchy, right? But hierarchy is life, and life is hierarchy. That's just the way physical systems and so on and so forth, all biological systems, and then social/psychological systems, things operate in a hierarchy. Uniformity does not exist, right? we can go on and on about that. But then, okay, so community versus YouTube. I think the YouTube aspect is just, okay, that's just human nature. The community, I think that, and it probably is a symptom of some other thing, which is, there are a lot of people who are raised by women. I think that the Black community, more or less, African American community, more or less, is a matriarchy.
Single mothers.
And the idea of hierarchy is not something that women push, nor should they. It's not their thing. But amongst guys, right, we're fine with hierarchy and different hierarchies. And that's the thing too that I gotta point out. You can have a group of guys that you consider your friends and that you respect and you esteem them because you feel, and you respect the fact that they esteem you because you feel you can respect the esteem that they put on. But you guys are slightly different. You have slightly different traits and different expertise. But you know that, when it comes to X, you defer to Solo. Solo is leading us now because it's restaurant time, right? And Solo is the man in the restaurant, right? Or when it comes to Y, that guy, that's his expertise. We follow, we fall in line. There's almost like a military discipline to it, where we know to follow and we know that hierarchy is important, okay? And that hierarchy is not just given frivolously. Okay, if you think about generals back in the days of lords and barons and so on and so forth, you think Napoleon and Alexander, they led from the front.
Right.
They led from the front. So picture yourself in this helicopter. You jump into a jungle from Beirut, or there's no jungles in Beirut, Vietnam, let's say. Right? And it's military time, right? And there's Sergeant Slaughter. Okay, let's just call him Sergeant Slaughter. He's the man, right? Everybody knows Sergeant Slaughter is the man, okay? Right. Everyone there is scared, okay? But guess what? Sergeant Slaughter he goes down first.
Right.
When he goes down, you're like, I don't care. I'll go die if I can die next to Sergeant Slaughter. Right? This is a man's world, okay? As I said, it's not something that women push, nor should they. Right. So in a community where you're raised by women, I don't think that ethos is emphasized. This ethos of Sergeant Slaughter and hierarchy and so on and so forth per se.
Right.
So I think that's the pushback in the community, if you will.